Thank you so very much for joining us here today at Church on the Rock. I know that God has something incredible planned for you throughout this message. If this is your first time tuning into our podcast, let me encourage you to go to jesusistherock.org. That's our website. On there, you will find anything and everything you need to know about us. Now, before we jump into this, let me pray that God has a specific word for you.
And I normally work on the series. I've been working on it for a long time, but it's one of those things that family and friends are probably sick of hearing, because it doesn't really matter. Somebody can be talking about football, and I'm like, speaking of football, let me tell you about this in the series that I'm doing. You know, speaking of fishing, let me tell you about this thing on chasing wisdom. You know, it's just like, and I don't know if it's because of the time that I've put into it, of preparing it, or if it's because of the effect and the impact that it's had and having on me, that I hope and pray that it has on you. So anyway, I'm really excited about doing this. And what I'm going to try to do is use some of the Wednesday nights. A lot of times when I'm doing a series, we'll sort of hand off Wednesday nights and do something else, because I really like to focus on the series. But I think during this series, for at least for most of it, I'm going to try to stick with almost some kind of little mini teachings. Wednesday nights will probably be a little shorter than normal, but I'm going to try to stay in that same vein of wisdom. We're going to stay in the Proverbs, and because that's really where all of this whole series revolves around, is the book of Proverbs. And we're going to be just doing some little snippets out of Proverbs on Wednesday night. Now, because you are the Wednesday night faithful and you made the extra effort to get up and be here midweek, you get a head start. And so you're going to get some inside information that the others are not going to get until Sunday, just to give you a heads up. We're doing a couple of little things that are incentives, because I feel so strong about this series. I really want people to be here. So we've been talking about, one of the things we're going to do is, for anyone that's here for all 5 messages, 5 weeks, we're going to be talking about chasing wisdom. And if you're here every Sunday and you sign in on the clipboard, then you're going to get a really nice little gift at the end of the series. So we've got those, and we've got it ordered for you, and it's going to be a really nice little gift. And then also, whoever brings the most guests with them throughout the series, same way, they'll sign in on the little clipboards, and you'll put, I am a guest of, and if they're a guest of Bobby, well, if at the end of the series, Bobby has brought more guests than anyone else, then a friend of mine has donated his condo in Destin for a 2-night stay for whoever brings the most guests during this series. So it's a nice little vacation package. You say you're going to bribe people to come to church? Absolutely. Absolutely. Paul said, I become all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. And so if it takes bribing, that's how bad I want you here for this series. It's funny because both of my daughters were at the Easter service, and Bree, my youngest daughter, who came home with me, and so she says, Dad, tell me about this series that you're doing. I said, well, it all revolves around the Proverbs. And so I start just kind of unloading on her, telling her a little bit about the series. And she said, it sounds like it's really going to be good. She said, I don't think I've ever really read Proverbs. And I'm like, seriously? And so I get the Bible and I start showing her, and I start reading her, just the very first of Proverbs, where we're going to look at a little bit tonight, explaining what Proverbs, who knows who wrote Proverbs? You know who wrote Proverbs? Anybody? Everybody? Somebody? Proverbs was written by Solomon. Okay, let me back up then, give you just a little 1-minute history on Solomon. Solomon's the son of King David. Solomon is set to take over as the king of Israel. When David passes, it'll be passed on to Solomon. So God comes to Solomon and says, Solomon, it's almost like Aladdin and the magic genie. He says, I'm going to give you anything you want. Tell me what you want. And Solomon said, I've got to rule this kingdom. And to rule it well like my father has, he said, I need wisdom. I don't even know how to come in and go out. I can't. He's ruled. He's been the greatest ruler Israel's ever had. And now it's going to be on me. I've had wisdom. And the Bible says that God was so impressed that he didn't ask for money. like we would. Come on, what do you want? Money. Give me the money. He said God was so impressed that he didn't ask for money and he didn't ask for long life, but he asked for wisdom. God said, not only am I going to make you the wisest man who ever lived, but I'm going to give you wealth like no man has ever had, and I'm going to give you a long life because you didn't ask for it. God was so pleased that he asked for wisdom. And I think that's just incredible. And so what we get here in Proverbs is some of the wisdom of Solomon. What is a proverb? These are just Solomon's proverbs. These are not all the proverbs. There are lots of proverbs. There's a little Chinese proverbs you hear me quote sometime. There's a Chinese proverb that says, he who calls himself a leader but has no followers is in reality just taking a walk. If you can call yourself a leader, but if nobody's following you, you're just taking a walk. You're not leading anything. That's a proverb. So we have proverbs everywhere, and we're going to look at some proverbs tonight. But what we're going to be focusing on is some of the proverbs of Solomon. But anyway, just to give you a little example of how exciting this is, I wanted to share with you what my daughter, after she left and went home. So she writes to me yesterday, and here's what she says. She says, Dad, I've had my nose buried in Proverbs for almost an hour. I'm binding wisdom around my neck and writing it on the tablet of my heart, because that's how the King James writes in here. She said, I love these words. So now she writes me back today and she says, so Dad, you've ruined my last 2 days by telling me about these 3 channels of wisdom, which is what we're going to talk about Sunday. So she says, because I've so desperately wanted to put off working hard on my doctoral stuff, the question now bombards my mind, is this wise? Proverbs rings in my ears. Lazy hands brings poverty, but diligent hands brings wealth. So onward I tread. So she's gotten into the Proverbs, and it's doing like it's done me, and like I think it does anybody that reads Proverbs. It will wreck you. It will mess you up. Proverbs will mess you up, but it'll mess you up in such a great way. And so starting Sunday, I'm going to kind of give some homework with this, because what I want people to do is actually it's about 35 days or something like that in the series from start to finish, but there are 31 Proverbs. So I'm going to ask people to get in the habit of trying to read 1 chapter of Proverbs a day. Now, you can do that in about normally 2 to 3 minutes. That's about what it will take of your day to read 1 chapter of Proverbs. I've probably read the book of Proverbs in the last 2 months 12 or 14, 15 times through the book. It's not a hard book to read. The biggest problem with reading 1 chapter a day is you won't want to stop. You'll read 1 chapter and you'll want to read another one, another one. At least I do. I read Proverbs like other people eat potato chips. It's like Lay's. You can't eat just one. I love the Proverbs. But here's how the Proverbs begin. In Proverbs chapter 1, verse 1, it says, these are the Proverbs of Solomon, David's son, king of Israel. Now listen, the purpose of these Proverbs is to teach people wisdom and discipline. That's the purpose. That's the purpose of this series. That's the purpose of these Proverbs, to teach people wisdom and discipline and to help them understand wise sayings. Through these Proverbs, people will receive instruction in discipline, good conduct, and doing what is right, just, and fair. Should this not be stuff we're reading and learning? I mean, this stuff should be taught in elementary school. And these Proverbs will make the simple-minded clever. Even the simple-minded, it'll make clever. It'll give knowledge and purpose to young people. Let those who are wise listen to these Proverbs and become even wiser. Even if you're not simple, if you're already wise, he says, listen to this, you'll get even wiser. You'll get even wiser. And let those who understand receive guidance by exploring the depths and meanings of these proverbs, parables, wise sayings, and riddles. So that tells us the purpose. Verse 7 says, fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Only fools despise wisdom and discipline. It would be foolish for us to not learn the Proverbs and learn from them. So that's why it's with a bit of excitement and urgency that I'm diving into this series called Chasing Wisdom. Now, Proverbs. I remember there's no use in having a plan B. It only distracts from plan A. You know, when you have no backup plan, then that's when you're at your best. You know, there's no plan B. We're going to make it. These are Proverbs. Tonight, for just a very few minutes, again, just to kind of continue, I'm going to share with you one of Solomon's Proverbs that talks about wisdom and why wisdom is so important and what is the flip side of wisdom. So I'm just calling it wisdom versus foolishness, because really that's it. It's either wisdom or foolishness. We're going to walk in wisdom or walk in foolishness. So Proverbs chapter 9, and let's read the first 1 through 6. Solomon says, wisdom has built her spacious house with 7 pillars. She's prepared a great banquet, mixed the wines, set the table. She sent her servants to invite everyone to come. She calls out from the heights overlooking the city, come home with me. This is wisdom calling. She urges the simple, those without good judgment. She says, come eat my food and drink the wine I have mixed. Leave your foolish ways behind and begin to live. Learn how to be wise. Wisdom is crying out, leave your foolishness behind and come learn how to be wise. Learn to be wise. And I love how Solomon uses what we call is a big word, anthropomorphism. It's just a big $3 word that means to attach a human-like characteristic to a non-human element. Any of you ever have a car named Old Betsy? You know, I mean, it's like, you know, or you say, well, she was a good car. Well, it wasn't a she, but, and that's kind of what he does. And he attaches wisdom as a woman. Says wisdom has built her house and she sits here but she is wisdom and she's calling out. Now, why does he refer to her as being a woman? Or why does he give wisdom this human quality, this human characteristic? I don't know. So when I don't know, I'll give you a Rodgerism. This is my theory. I think he makes it a human, a person, a woman, to help us grasp wisdom as a real thing, touchable, tangible. Will Smith, he sort of alluded to this. He said, because some people feel like wisdom is just out there and it's some godlike thing that only a special few people can get, you know, like Solomon's got the gift of wisdom and maybe there's a few people that's really wise, or maybe you see somebody like him, well, he's got all these good things to say and I could never do that. And I think the reason here says, no, this is a thing. Wisdom is calling out to you, crying out to you, come and I can make you wise. This is something you can touch, you can attain it, you can have it. Anyone can become wise. Look at verse 4. He says, come with me, she urges, to the simple, to those who are unlearned. He says, come with me, even if you're without good judgment, come and eat my food, drink my wine I've mixed, leave your foolish ways behind and begin to live. Learn how to be wise. Learn how to be wise. Even if you're simple, even if you don't see yourself as very smart, listen to me, intelligence does not equal wisdom. That's the first thing you need to know about wisdom. Knowledge does not equal wisdom. A high IQ does not equal wisdom. A high ACT score does not equal wisdom. You may just be a good test taker. I used to be a good test taker because I would have tricks I would use in taking tests. You've probably done that, word association and things, with something. And I could take tests, but that didn't make me smart. I didn't necessarily learn the material. So knowledge doesn't equal wisdom. Wisdom, if you want a definition of wisdom, here's my definition, is wisdom is knowing how to apply knowledge. Wisdom is knowing how to apply knowledge. Wisdom is knowing how to use intelligence. You can be the most knowledgeable, most intelligent person in the world, and if you don't know how to use it, then it does you no good. Some of the most intelligent people I know make some of the most unwise and foolish decisions I've ever seen. We see a lot of that, smart people making dumb decisions. So, be careful you don't confuse knowledge and intelligence with wisdom. There's a difference. And I love the invitation here. Wisdom is begging you to seek her out. Come to me, just come to me. That's why we're calling this series Chasing Wisdom. Chasing wisdom, because the truth is, you're going to chase something. We're going to pursue something. If you're not chasing wisdom, then you're probably chasing foolishness. So let's see how this turns out, because come to find out, we discover another woman. Wisdom is not the only woman in this picture here. There's another woman. She's not the only one crying out for your attention. Let's read verse 13. Here is a woman named Folly, or Foolishness. She's loud, she's brash, she's ignorant, and doesn't even know it. She sits in her doorway on the heights overlooking the city. She calls out to men going by who are minding their own business. Come home with me, she urges the simple. To those without good judgment, listen what she says. Stolen waters is refreshing. Food eaten in secret is the best. But the men don't realize that her former guests are now in the grave. Do you need to even preach anymore? I mean, that's the thing. There's really nothing more you need to say about this. How many good men have been destroyed by the fluttering eyelids of a foolish woman? How many strong, smart men have been captivated by Delilah? How many women have been hurt by a foolish man? Gender doesn't matter. How many marriages have been ruined by foolishness? How many careers have been destroyed because of folly? She is just as real as wisdom. Wisdom brings forth life. Foolishness brings forth death and destruction. Wisdom will lift you up. Foolishness will tear you down. Wisdom gives hope and healing. Foolishness brings fear and torment. So what we have here is two choices, foolishness or wisdom. But right in the middle of the description and the introduction of these two women, Solomon talks about the choice. The decision, whom you're going to follow. Both will call your name. Wisdom will call for you to come, learn. Leave your foolish ways and learn how to be wise, while foolishness will call to you and say, come in. This is the fun way. This, what's done in secret's the best. Things here. Both will call your name. But as the prophet Joshua once said, at some point you got to say, choose you this day whom you're going to serve. As for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. Jesus said you can't serve two masters. You're either going to serve wisdom or you're going to serve foolishness, one of the other. So now let's read about the choice, and then I'm going to be done. Listen to verse 10. It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Knowledge of the Holy One results in understanding. Listen to this. Listen closely. Wisdom will multiply your days and add years to your life. If you become wise, you will be the one to benefit. If you scorn wisdom, you will be the one to suffer. There's nothing else I need to add to that. There's no commentary really that I can make that makes that any plainer. If you become wise, you will be the one to benefit. If you scorn wisdom, if you say, I don't need to hear about wisdom, I don't want to, I want to hear about this, I don't need. If you scorn wisdom, you'll be the one to suffer. It's that simple. Wisdom brings life. Foolishness brings destruction. That's what's got me excited about this series. I want us to begin to pursue wisdom. I want us to look back on our lives with less regrets. God knows we all look back on our lives with regrets, where we are today. I just want to, at some future point, look back with less regrets. I want to live my life from this point forward with fewer regrets. I want to begin to pursue wisdom. I got a phone call this morning. I'll tell you this and then we'll go. But it's just the thought of a life well lived. Many of you remember Tommy Fortenberry. He's a good friend of mine. He was part of our church for a long time. He's living in Louisiana now. But he used to tell me about his former pastor, Tom Hamilton. And Tom Hamilton was just a man of great faith. He and his wife bore 7 children, never went to the hospital, never had a doctor, all 7 children born at home. Him or his wife or none of his 7 children ever went to a doctor their whole life. Whatever they needed, they believed God for. Tommy would always tell me about this. He said, I've never seen a man of faith like this. He didn't put down people who did. He didn't scorn them. He just believed God for everything. And he called me this morning and he says, my friend, Tom Hamilton, my former pastor. I said, yeah. He said, Bonnie called me a little while ago and said they found him in his office this morning and he was slumped over his desk and his Bible was open to James 4:17, I think. He had his pen in his hand and he had just underlined the verse that life here is a vapor. We're here today and gone tomorrow. And they found him with his head on his Bible and he went to be with the Lord. And I thought, what a way to go. What a way to go. Now, I'm sure if you talk to him, he would probably tell you, if he looked back on his life, there's probably some regrets, but I can bet you there's a lot fewer regrets than most of us have. Just because a man chooses, to walk in faith and walk and chase wisdom. Wisdom. That's what we're going to be talking about, and you're going to hear it probably till you either get really excited about it or really sick of it. But for the next 5 weeks, we're going to be talking about chasing and pursuing wisdom. Let's stand up tonight.
Again, thank you so very much for checking out our podcast. If you would like to share what God is doing in your life, maybe you have a prayer request or just seeking answers, let me encourage you to go to our Facebook or our Twitter, or even email us at pray@jesusistherock.org. If you would like to give to our ministries financially, you may easily do so by going to jesusistherock.org and clicking on the giving button at the very right-hand corner of the screen. Have a wonderful day.